I'll share it out to mine too.
We have. I've been looking for a place in our building where I can set up a little bit of a studio or something, but every nook and cranny, every classroom, every closet is so full of stuff. It's unreal.
I hear you.
So
we've got a security room that has, for some reason, 3 of the walls are painted green. So I've thought about setting something up in there. And I was like, do you guys have you ever used this for a green screen? And they're like, no. I think the idea was to, but we just kind of painted it, and then no one ever did anything with it. So we used it when we did we had a youth rally at the church, and it was in July, so our theme was Christmas in July. So I had a Santa come in, and so we had him in there, and then we used that green screen to put everyone in a tropical scene with Santa.
There you go.
Fun.
man, that Christmas in July was fantastic. I'm just gonna tell you.
It was a lot of fun. It was a really good, chill youth rally. It was fun. And KT did a good job speaking. For sure. We're doing it again, June 2nd. I just met with our preaching minister, Jody, to kind of work on what we're going to talk about.
No Christmas theme though this year.
No Christmas theme, not in June. Christmas in June doesn't really work out.
Not the same.
Yeah, no.
I am going to order some Sunday Cool shirts for it, though. Design some Netsis just shirts. Netsis Day shirts or something.
Northeast Texas.
I've gone rogue.
No more asking for approval. Just get it done, huh?
Well, I was like, hey, so we charged $20 a person last year, so we'll just say, hey, you can't charge more than $20 a head. And they're like, oh yeah, that sounds good. And I was like, great, I can feed these kids one meal for like $5 a head, and then order T-shirts and stickers. Easy.
I don't know. Whatever we had for lunch last time, was it nachos?
They did. I didn't even know they could get such a good deal, but one of our ladies has an inside track, and she did Juicy's taco bars, but she got them half off or something because she ordered so many of them. So it was she was like, it was so easy, and she's doing our food this time too. So it's nice when you have volunteers who are like, oh yeah, I'm really good at doing food for youth rallies, so just let me do that.
Taco bars are my specialty, right? That's a good deal.
Hey, you can't go wrong with a good taco bar.
No, so in Oklahoma City, we basically know what good taco places are coming because we watch what gets hot in Dallas, and then they'll put one in Norman, and then they'll finally make. So we have Torchy's now here, which was a big deal. We used to love to go to Dallas and get those, but now they're up here. And so the next one we're waiting for is Velvet Taco. I think it's made its way to Norman.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
So
Big Truck Taco.
Yeah.
Is basically a Torchy's.
Yeah.
And they had Big Truck Taco when we were still there. So
yeah, that was the first Oklahoma City kind of food truck that I was aware of as the food truck scene sort of really flourished. That was the first one I knew of, and then of course they got their restaurant, the brick and mortar as well.
Right.
The brick and mortar.
We run low on really good Mexican food around here.
I'm unfortunately not surprised.
Now then, if you want some seafood or jambalaya or they would put crawfish on a taco, I'm sure. Crawdad. You must be from Northeast Texas if you call them crawdads, Aaron.
I must be from Oregon if I call them crawdads, because that's what we called them growing up.
Yeah.
And ours lived in a little bit cleaner rivers, so.
Oh, definitely.
Because we were at the start, not the end.
Very beginning.
I always find it weird that we used to hunt crawdads growing up, and it wasn't I don't know. I just didn't think they were all over. I didn't know really a whole bunch about them.
The first crawfish boil I went to, they were they started pulling them out of the water. I'm like, these are the things we use for bait, man, to catch real food. We're eating these?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Let's flip over here. out of place. Here we go.
Till we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.
I love that, man. That was a great
Love
intro.
it. Yeah, right. Well, guys, this is Behind the Beards. Here on Behind the Beards, we pull the curtain back, take a look behind the scenes, and do our best to reveal the things that go on in the hearts and minds of those who are called lead your ministries and your churches. I'm Joshua Fowler, preaching minister in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My brother today on the left side of the screen, youth minister in Longview, Texas. That's all in a different little place here. And we got a special guest joining us today, Josh Kingcade, are you an education minister? What's your official title there at Memorial Road?
Yep.
Education minister. Keep it simple and know exactly what's going on, man. Guys, it's good to have you with us. We're glad that you guys are here with us. Josh, what's going on in your world these days, man?
Oh, things are good up here. We had a lot of not a lot, more staff transition than we've used to recently. Nothing terrible, just, everybody's kind of making some different kind of plans for their life after COVID. Everybody kind of laid low, and so we're welcoming some new staff members on board. All good. We're excited about that. So we just had an off-site day yesterday and did some, let me just tell you, it was neat to be able to plan for like a year or two ahead instead of like this thing we want to do next week, and if that can even happen. That's such a breath of fresh air.
That is cool. That's awesome.
It is good. I saw you were at Preston Crest this weekend.
Correct.
Doing some teaching down there.
Yes, I had a lot of fun doing a kickoff lesson for a Deuteronomy series for them. You know me, like that's not surprising. That's my thing.
No, right. Finding those little obscure things that nobody really likes, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I hope they like it a little more after we talked about it for an hour. But I do understand that's not everyone's favorite topic of class.
Stay tuned for Leviticus.
That's right. That's right.
There's so much going on. You talk about transitions. My youngest is getting ready to graduate. I couldn't say it last week because he hadn't made an announcement, but he actually accepted a scholarship to go bowl at Oklahoma Christian.
All right. Congratulations.
So, yeah, man, he had things narrowed down to Louisiana State or OC, and I'm really glad. I'm excited for kind of what's next for him. But it's crazy. I've always looked at this moment and youngest kid getting out of the house. It's like, man, that's really cool. And now it's almost here, and it's like, man, what am I going to do with my life here when no kids are here in the house?
Yeah, man, your youngest. Good grief. Your youngest is about to be gone.
Get another dog, I guess, right?
No, you do not need another dog.
So I got to go back to the Deuteronomy and Leviticus thing because as a youth minister, I remember this moment when I was in youth group. It was a Wednesday night, and we were just so rowdy. We just would not listen to the youth minister at all. Ben Cook was my youth minister, and I just remember one time, like he just got so frustrated that he just he closed his computer. And he just pulled out his Bible and he turned over to Leviticus and he just started reading. And we had hour-long Wednesday night classes that were just teens. And so for 45 minutes, he just read straight through Leviticus. And at the end of it, we were like, what is going on? This was really boring.
Not what
Ben.
we do.
Yeah. I was like, well, this is terrible. And he goes, hey, guys, I put a lot of effort into preparing for Bible class. And so I just appreciate it if you would come and be willing to at least listen or not be disruptive the entire time. And we're a small youth group, maybe 15, 20 at tops kind of a thing. So I always remember that. And I always think in the back of my mind as a youth minister, sometimes when the kids are really rowdy on Wednesdays, I'm like, I will just read Leviticus to you and you will enjoy it.
Way to teach them that Leviticus is a punishment. I appreciate that.
That's right.
Well done.
That's right.
That's what we're trying to correct now these days, right?
That's right.
So that always makes me laugh. Whenever I think of Leviticus, that's what I always originally think. Yeah, see, I'm scarred for life. There
I know. It's never going to work for you.
Speaking of reading the Bible and reading the Bible responsibly,
that's right.
Josh I guess maybe now we got to specify. Josh Kingcade has a really really cool podcast called Reading the Bible Responsibly. How'd that come about for you? What was your journey into getting into podcasting?
Oh, I had two things kind of converged. One is I had a podcast before, but it was mainly talking to people in Christian education about Christian education topics. So as you can imagine, my listenership was not huge on that. It was I enjoyed the conversations, but also I kind of thought, what's a more sustainable project that I could do to engage people, everyday folks, not ministers, not scholars. And also, like, I mean, you guys know, there are things like that you would love people in your churches to know, like as you're teaching, like, man, there's some things that have helped me do this better.
Yeah.
Is there a humble way I could encourage people? Like, so in other words, that we don't try to read Genesis strictly as a history book. Wouldn't that be helpful if most folks would learn what Genesis is really trying to do? I think that would help us have healthier conversations and maybe not fight the wrong battles, you know?
Absolutely.
So it's those kinds of things. And so then I thought, well, podcasting is now kind of, I think it's at its height, and maybe, I don't know where it is in the future, but a lot of people have plenty of podcasts to listen to. And what they didn't need from me, at least, was another hour-long thing. So I thought, I'm going to do something that's quick, like 7 to 10 minutes per episode. And that way you can feel accomplished. Some people just binge several of them. I don't care. They're short. So you can get one little thing. I call it bite-sized deep dive. So pick one little thing. We're going to do it for 7 to 10 minutes.
Bite-sized deep dives.
One little thing you can know that maybe you didn't know before. And not just so you can know new things, but so you can, be more faithful, so you can have better conversations and maybe not misuse the Bible. Because it's easy to look in the past and see how people misuse the Bible. Like, oh, man, I can't believe they used those scriptures to talk about slavery like that. Well, yeah. I wonder if we do some similar things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, we have it all right. Everything's
that's
perfect.
right.
It's great.
No, I do like,
awesome.
because I like the 7 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
The thing about it is, like, I'm listening to those, and when I get to like that last little section, it's like, oh man, I'm already here.
Yeah.
And so it's like kind of just leaves you wanting more, and it's kind of a hard balance to find, right?
Yeah,
and,
it is.
Getting all the information you want to get into, down there. I've started doing on Sunday mornings, today's teaching in 60 seconds.
Yeah, you're a TikTok star, man.
Well, yeah, with all of my 15 followers, probably. But I do it because it helps me really get to this place where, all right, what if nothing else, what are the things in my mind that need to be solid and secure in this teaching? And so, really taking the time to get to those basic nuts and bolts of what needs to be said is pretty cool. And I enjoy them. And there's been some things on there that I've read through, and it's like, yeah, like sometimes I'm like, I know people that need to hear this, and then I get to a lot of them, and it's like, that was really good. I needed to hear that. Sometimes it's a refresher.
Yeah,
It's a new thing, so it's good stuff.
Thank you.
Got some good resources. Josh Kingcade does. You got your own website now, right? Are they still on mrcc.org as well?
Yeah, so everything's hosted on our church website, and then my website just sort of directs people to those, plus other things that I do. But yeah, the main resource people use for me, I think, is the curriculum that I write as part of my job here. We got people downloading that multiple times a week, most frequently on Saturday nights.
Yeah, right? Yeah, yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. We put those PDFs online for free. They're 10 to 13 week teaching series, some textual, a few topical. So we'll do them here first, and run through it, and then I kind of clean them up and generalize them, so anything specific, reference to our church is out of there, and then they're just online for free. So we're always grateful when people want to use those, and it's fun when I hear from like college friends like, hey, we're using this curriculum series that you wrote at our church, and that's immensely gratifying to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is good.
That's awesome.
It seems like our resources, particularly in churches of Christ, are when you're looking for good, solid, relevant material, it's hard to find.
Well, and just adult classes are no longer a priority for a lot of publishing groups and even some churches. I understand there's a lot of transition, and so even finding materials for that sort of setting that we have, which is sort of this, probably the same in your places, like this middle-sized group, 30, 40 people, something like that. So it's not really a small group discussion, but you need some interactivity. So you got to have, just having lesson plans like that out there, it seems a little bit rarer these days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you've been doing this here at Memorial Road for Has it been 15 years?
Almost. Yeah, I'm in my 14th year. So,
Wow.
yeah, I started in June of '08.
That's
I started to say-
fantastic. Of
started to-
08?
Yeah.
Wow. I don't want to make anyone feel old, but that's when I started at OC. That was
yeah.
right, because I graduated in 07.
Well, the other Josh, this Josh
Perfect.
is older than me, so you're fine.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's right. No, and I was about to say it's been a few years, but then I think, man, we've been out of Oklahoma City for 10 years now. So
Yeah.
that is hard to believe. So yeah, it's crazy, but you get ready to sit down and write curriculum. I don't know about you, Aaron, but I can write a lesson and I can write a lesson series. But
I
when
usually
we
get mine
talk-
on Saturday nights.
you download it from
I'm
somewhere.
one of those downloaders.
But when you really think about putting together a curriculum where you're looking at a long-term plan for whether it's students or adults, Aaron, what's the most challenging thing for you when it comes to putting that together?
For me, it's that entire map. Like, I get very narrow focused and very like within like the first, hey, this is what I'm going to do for the first 3 weeks. And then if I have to stretch that out, that's when I start to, or not even stretch it out, but to really dive into like a long map for my curriculum. That's where I struggle with that and seeing that full vision. And I think for me, like in our context, like I use a curriculum on Sunday mornings, mainly because that's when we have a lot of our visitors. That's when I have a lot of teachers that are coming in, and so it's nice to be able to give them a curriculum. And so Wednesday nights is on me. So I write my curriculum for Wednesday nights and plan all those out. And I try to plan them. I think my longest curriculum that I plan is only like 6 weeks at tops. And a lot of that's because I try to do stuff that's extremely relevant at that time for my youth group. But if I try to plan something out longer than that, I start to really struggle and wrestle with direction.
Yeah, and like when I was looking at like youth groups, okay, middle schoolers, I've got 3 years.
Right, yeah.
So, and then if they come on into my high school ministry, now then I've expanded that to 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So what can I cover in a cycle of 3 years, and what can I cover in a cycle of 4 years that gives them a broad spectrum? I mean, with adults, we kind of have this open-ended. So it's like, where do we go? Because I don't ever have a recycle point with adults. And so it's not that as adults we don't need to recycle material, because I go back and look at my notes that I took 4 years ago on the same topic, and
I burned them.
And I burned them. I'm almost
what was I
embarrassed at times that I
thinking?
taught them.
Yeah.
What are some of your biggest challenges, Josh, as you put some of these things together?
Well, one challenge is, so I'm not writing a lesson plan just for me. I'm writing a lesson plan that has to make sense to 20 other teachers on Sunday morning, and so that's
Can't do that.
I'm like you guys. I can study scripture and kind of put some stuff down on a legal pad, and I could write some pretty shorthand notes and get myself through a class if I were just teaching. But I got to have something that is helpful to a lot of other people. So that's one challenge. The other challenge too is, again, writing for multiple groups, because our classes are mostly divided generationally, and so I want a lesson plan that's broad enough. Now, our teachers are so good, and they will take what I do and make some tweaks to fit. If they're teaching mostly young parents, they'll emphasize some things that might be helpful for them, and I want them to do that. But in general, like I got some classes, so like right now we're doing Ezra Nehemiah. I got some classes who were automatically excited because they're like, this is cool, we don't study this often. And I got some classes who are like, this is terrible, there's a reason we don't study this often. So because all our classes do the same thing on Sunday mornings, which is great for a lot of unity and cohesion and for simplicity of curriculum writing and teacher training. But so that's a challenge too. But to answer your question specifically, like if it's just curriculum writing, let's assume I'm just writing a lesson plan for me in one group, like most people are having to do. Even then, it's like, okay, here's the time frame I have. There's no possible way I can cover everything I want to cover in that time frame. So I'm going to have to choose some things to leave out. And that's really hard. But I'd rather choose ahead of time what I'm going to leave out than get to the end of class and speak at 60 miles an hour to try to get it said, even though everybody's mind is already checked out and they're leaving. So it's like, what are the key points that everyone needs to take home? Because I could double that if I wanted to. How do I distill this down into something that helps them?
Yeah,
And
that
there's
is.
a lot of nuggets of truth right in there that I just went, man, I understand that. Like that, the whole concept of, yeah, like I can do shorthand and I can write some notes
Yeah.
that that pertain to me. And it wasn't until my last job I was sitting down with the preacher I was working with, and he was like, you should really plan your events to where, like, if you broke your leg and had to go to the hospital, that somebody else could take your notes and like run your weekend. And I went, what? Like somebody be able to look at my notes and be able to teach the lesson that I was going to present. And that takes so much work, for me at least, and so much pre-thought of how do I write this so that somebody else can understand what's going on up in here, because half the time I don't know what's going on.
And
That's
I will
incredible.
put it on the Holy Spirit, right? It's like I do it this way
Yeah.
because I want the Holy Spirit to move in me in the moment, and I don't want to hem it in. But it is so much work. And I think I like what you said, Josh, about choosing ahead of time what needs to be omitted, because in the moment, I don't want to be a slave of the moment. I want to be able to be present in the moment and be intentional about the time that we have. Because the truth is, I mean, 45 minutes to 50 minutes is not a long time.
No.
And so I want to really be intentional with that time. And I think that comes down to what are the goals and the objectives that I've kind of laid out. And, we've talked, it seems like every other topic that we discuss, comes down to setting goals and setting objectives.
Yeah.
'Cause it's those things that we can really hang. Not like anything in the Bible is not important, but what's most relevant for this conversation that we're going to have. And it's just a vital aspect of anything that we're going to do is where do we want to get there, and what are the objectives along the way. I don't know what it is about goal setting that's so difficult, though.
I think, like in our context, we understandably we think it's worthy to say, well, we're going to spend 45 minutes studying John chapter 4. And I get that. Like, that's good. But it's maybe not the best way to frame it. So yes, 45 minutes in Scripture is better than 45 minutes doing some other things. But like, what's the point? I mean, it's even several times in the New Testament, Jesus says, "I'm telling you this so that," and then he states some learning objectives. Like, there's a reason we're doing this,
Right.
So that you might believe, or so. If I'm going to plan, and you can do goals on multiple levels, like goals for an individual lesson, goals for a lesson series, goals for like a year-long arc. So, here's a year-long thing our church is going to do. It might even involve the sermons in small groups too, not just adult classes or teen classes or whatever. So then if let's say I've set 5 goals, okay, what 2 or 3 units of study would get us there? Okay. And then each lesson needs to somehow tie into at least one of those goals, right? So it's weird in churches to talk about learning goals. Like people who are educators, like school teachers, like they get this. They understand about writing lesson goals and objectives. Many of us in ministry don't have that kind of training. We don't know what it is to set we don't know Bloom's taxonomy and what it is to set different kinds of learning outcomes. But Scripture says that all the time, the goal of what we're doing. And so I tell churches, pick some things. Like, what do you, Josh, you mentioned a minute ago, it's this open-ended loop with adults. And that's true. But what if you just set a loop, 5 years, 7 years? Like, we're going to try a 5-year plan. And at the end of 5 years, we hope that you can model the fruit of the Spirit better. We hope that you can discuss your faith with more clarity. We pick some things. You're going to have to pick some and leave some out. Pick some and go at it. And that helps you filter everything you do. So Brother Tim wants to do a Wednesday night class on this. Well, I can help Brother Tim focus his class if I say, hey, right now we're in the middle of achieving these goals. Can you give me like a paragraph on what you want to do and how it's going to help people in one way get at this larger goal?
Yeah, so vital. And, the truth is, just by the nature of our society, that you look at where your church was 5 years ago, it's very likely you don't have the same church.
No.
5 years down the road that you had then, whether it's people moving for jobs, and I mean, just the way people move and flow through life. So it's a good healthy adjustment to make there.
Well, and when you set, just in your guys' experience, when you make that goal and you say, hey, we're going to do a 5-year, we're going to do a 3-year, where's the frustration level when you're like 1 year into it and we're like, okay, well, we're going to switch this and we're going to start a new 3-year. And then we do that for a year, and then you're going to switch that for a new 3 years.
Well, thankfully, we are all of us on staff are pretty collaborative in coming
That's
up with
good.
multi-year plans, and so the staff and elders. In fact, we're in the middle of kind of beginning a new cycle. We took a couple of years off from multi-year plans.
Right? Yeah.
It was called "Keep Your Head Above Water,"
Yeah.
but we're finally getting to think about multi-year plans. So once we kind of settle on that, then it's like we're all going to come together. And we're going to talk about how our ministries can fit into this. And then we can go back into our corners and plan accordingly. And every now and then we touch base. And so like Phil, our preacher, and I will talk about, hey, are there some points where it would be good if the preaching and the adult classes and even the small groups were in alignment? Not all year,
Right.
every year. But is there a 4 to 6 week period where it'd be really great to do that? So the nice thing is when you have a lot of collaborative people who are willing to say, let's come together, pray, and discern a plan, and we're pretty much going to stick to it. And so you can know 3 years from now, here's our church's theme for the year. Plan your stuff accordingly.
Yeah. And the other big challenge that we face is finding balance. And there's several different points of balance. And this is true with preaching or teaching, whether it's a textual study or a topical study. We kind of get into this habit of, I'm going to say this for preaching for sure. Topical preachers have gotten a really bad rap.
Right.
And
Yeah.
in some ways, understandably so. But you can still have a textual study even under, a topical plan.
Right.
So, but seeking a balance between studying the topics that really impact our lives and having those scriptural focus where we're just studying through a book. The other thing is, what is your audience? How much scholarly material you're going to throw at them versus the
Right.
things that are just common and practical. And those balances are really difficult to strike at times. I go through, I see it, and it's like, oh, there's a Greek word here. How often do I use the Greek language in the lexicon? Because I'm not a Greek scholar, but there are some people that really feed on that kind of information. And I just have to rely on somebody else to have done the work. So I find those people that I trust to use that info.
Absolutely.
Is there a balance point that you kind of look for when you're making a plan?
Our general plan here, just speaking for adult classes, so we've got 4 quarters in a year. 2 to maybe 3 of those are going to be studies through a book of Scripture, okay? And then 1 and sometimes 2 of those are going to be topical, but not topical in the sense of like parenting, because like we have venues to do that on Wednesday nights, and I think that's great. Topical in the sense of like, so a recent example would be we did a series called The Unity of the Spirit and the Bond of Peace, and so each week was a different passage that spoke of unity or putting others above yourself or that sort of thing. So each week was rooted in a unit of Scripture, and then explored the topic further. I don't have a problem with topical stuff. I'm just not good at it. So like if you ask me to write a lesson on godly parenting, what I want to say is give me a text. I'm not saying I have to do only that, but can I start somewhere? That's just my training. That's not because I think it's the only way. I'm just much better at starting with a text, writing some stuff about that, and then seeing what roads that leads me down. I'm very grateful for people who can just start with a topic and assemble some material to go with that. That's great. That's just not how I write our lessons. So I would want to say in our church, our preaching is probably, I don't know how Phil would say it, I would say more topical. I mean, we're not always in like some expository series through, say, Ephesians, even though that's one we did this year. But I'm doing that. So that's our balance. One venue is more tilted toward topical, our preaching, and a different venue is more tilted toward textual stuff. That's how I would seek the balance. Look across ministries instead of just in one place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a broader scope of how you kind of do church and how your church operates like as a whole, and
Right.
Yeah, accomplishing those goals. So really getting together as a staff, as elders, and as just a church as a whole, and looking at the bigger picture.
Right.
That's cool. That's enlightening.
You said a topical, not really kind of your thing. I will never forget the first adult Bible class I ever taught at Memorial Road. My wife and I had been married for maybe 5 years. Dustin was young. He was maybe 3 years old, 2 years old. And I was filling in for a teacher in the 39ers class.
Oh, man.
I didn't know what the 39ers class was. I thought it was going to be a whole bunch of 39-year-old people.
Uh-huh.
These were people who were born in 39.
Yeah.
Before.
Their kids and grandkids were 39. Yeah.
Any guesses on what the topic of the class was that I was supposed to be teaching?
It was either something on Leviticus or something on worship. That's what I'm going to guess.
It was on fidelity and marriage.
Oh, no.
And so I'm looking at these men and women, and some of them have been married for 60 years, 50 years. And I'm supposed to teach them something on fidelity and marriage. And I'm going, I am in the wrong place.
Sure.
I'll tell you, they loved on us, and they just to be able to, for that first experience, to take that curriculum and to kind of lay out a topic and allow them to speak on it was such a rewarding and learning experience for me. But yeah, sometimes, you just find yourself in a place where it's like, I am out of my depth in this moment.
Yes.
But
you're right. That's such a sweet group. I'm not surprised they were kind and gracious.
Yeah. One of the other challenges is the resources that we have. And this has kind of been a hot topic in ministry circles lately of recycling material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Is there anything new out there, that you can preach on and teach on? I cannot imagine going through a doctrinal program and having to write a thesis on something that's never been addressed before, because the Google machine populates just about any question you could ask it. But, there is, there's an ethical way and a responsible way to use the resources that we're given. And how do you determine, like, when you need to give somebody credit for something that's been done, or when is that more take away from what's going on? Do you have a kind of a pattern that you follow in that arena?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to document sources, and I ask the question: Will people think that I did this on my own? And what's an appropriate way to acknowledge the person who did it? But like you guys are, like Josh, you're in a preaching world. It's really different to always have to be like, I mean, how do you footnote something in a sermon? So it's always appropriate to acknowledge other people. But I don't want it to be a distraction, because the other side is you're quoting a bunch of stuff to look smart, and as this Hebrew scholar says. And so the broader thing I want to say is I think ministers can imagine themselves in two roles. One is content creator, and you need to do that sometimes because creativity is a good thing, and your people, and these publishing houses don't, so you know what they need. But also there are times to be a curator, and the curator says, I'm the person who matches all this content out there with the people I know. And so I'm going to curate. And so when people say, hey, what's a good resource for X? I know, there's 5 out there. But knowing you, I think the thing you're going to resonate most with this one. I just think I'm always going to err on the side of giving credit, but not to the point where it becomes a distraction. So I know some preachers who in their sermon, if they have like an outline that people have, they'll just put that in the written part at the bottom and don't spend a bunch of time in their sermon, like, orally footnoting everything that they've done. But I don't ever want people to get the impression that something they're receiving from me is something I created, if in fact I didn't create it.
Right. Yeah, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge in the, I don't know about you, Aaron, but especially with teenagers, because there are so many points of influence,
right?
And I'm going through the places where they are, and it's like, man, if I've seen something on a TikTok, or if I've seen something on a reel, and I'm going to regurgitate any portion of this back to them, they're going to recognize it, right? So, you have any different experience there with kids, Aaron, as far as just kind of let them know about sources and resources and things?
I try to find like if I recommend any kind of a social media kind of a resource, I spend a good amount of time like making sure it is something that I want to recommend when it comes to that. To be fair, like I spend a lot of time recommending. It's a book. It's called the Bible. No, but I spend a lot of time actually trying to really get my teens to refocus in and to spend more time in their actual word. And so using resources that really guide them to spending more time in their word, just because I know that in their free time, they're going to be drawn to social media. They're going to be drawn to TikToks, Reels, whatever there is. And so if I can influence them into really spending that time in their actual Bible, like, does that make sense? Like, I don't want that to sound like, I don't know, like old school or something, but it's really like I already know they're going to go to those places. And sometimes I will use those sources on my Wednesday night class and I'll say, hey, watch this. Okay, what'd you think of this? Okay, can we dive into this a little bit deeper? Can we do a further study? Are they right? Are they wrong? Are they, cherry picking verses? Are they looking at context? And so then we'll look in our Bibles and kind of move through that and talk about that. And I do that in our classes because that's how the algorithm works, right? As it pulls and shows me some of that stuff, and I go, wow, this could be influential for my teens, and so I'll use those kind of resources as part of my class. But that's how I structure that part of my ministry, I guess.
So in the corner of Christianity that I work in, there are some authors that just mentioning their name will completely turn people off.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, what you're using it for, whether it's right or wrong, and in some cases they may be right in having some of that hesitancy, but and so that's where a whole another set of challenges comes in. And so my question then becomes, okay, so I can either give credit to who said these words and have people completely write off, or I can say these words as if they're my own, and that's really not ethical either. So is there another avenue that may be more receptive to my people that has said almost the same way, maybe in the same thing, almost in a different way, that I can use that continues to open doors for people to continue to engage?
Yeah.
Or is there a way that I can take this idea and deliver it in a way that is unique and creative on my own, because I know the people that I'm talking to and teaching. And so, the sources that we have are good and positive, but we have to be responsible in the way we use them. But we always have to be mindful of. I think in churches, it's. I think we're coming back around to a good and right way of doing things. But for a long time, I think we just said, well, churches are non-for-profit, that CCLI stuff, just put the lyrics up there. It's not going to hurt anybody. We're not making any money off of it.
Yeah.
Nothing new under the sun. It's been said 100 times before. I'm just going to say it again. We don't really need to do things the right way.
Right.
And so I think we're really seeing a move and a focus with these generations that are coming up after us with a real focus on what's ethically right as we go forward, because we want to put that foot forward as we move into a culture that is so focused on, license and giving people the right credit. So just a caution there for folks that are writing to just be aware of that. So I struggle. Part of a good class, right, is giving all this information out there and then finding some way for the students, the people in the class, to begin to engage. I can't tell you how many times I've written what in my mind was a great discussion question that just gets crickets. And there's been other things that I thought were going to be rhetorical questions that I throw out there, and I can't get the class to stop talking. It's like, this isn't where I needed you to talk, right?
Right. Yeah.
Have something. You have any keys or what are the things that make up good discussion questions?
The first thing I would say is you've already been doing this, obviously, which is don't just plan your content, plan your questions. I know too many people who will write out their lesson plan and then rely on, the moment to help them think of a discussion question, which usually ends up something like, okay, well, what does this mean to you? Well, I mean, that's not a bad question, but it's not a great question. So I would say, to me, the key is less the content of the question. I mean, obviously, you don't want to ask Sunday school questions for kids like, okay, now who was Jesus's mother? Because then no one wants to answer. They're like, wait, is he for real? Like, that's a real question? I would say it's more about the delivery of the question than the content. And here are a couple of things I mean by that. Number one, people tend to be uncomfortable with silence. Teachers tend to be uncomfortable with silence. And so they ask the question, and then if in 2 seconds no one answers, they'll start answering it themselves. When you do that, you train your class, hey, if we'll just be quiet for a couple of seconds, he'll just go and we don't have to talk. So when they know that you're always going to answer your questions, they'll stop answering them themselves. The second thing I would say is ask the question in a simple form. There's a new genre of question that's called the podcast question. And the podcast question is something like this. Aaron, tell me about your ministry context. I mean, tell me where you've been from. What kind of things they'll ask 5 ways they'll ask the question. Mm-hmm. Like, just ask the question once. Don't do an explainer on the question. Ask it and just sit there and look as comfortable as you can. Like, hey, I got all day to wait you guys out. Let's see if somebody wants to talk, And then what helps too is I always start my lessons with a really lighthearted, like barely related to the lesson. If there's a lesson on forgiveness, my opening question before we get into the lesson might be, hey, tell the class about a time when you asked forgiveness instead of permission and how that went. And we have funny stories. Right, yeah. And that just gets people talking. And if you can get them talking in a low stakes way first, then they're already primed to talk in some higher stakes, more vulnerable ways when you want to actually get them processing the text. So that's my spiel on questions.
Yeah, and it's not about, I like that, it's not about the content of the question necessarily. Because I think a lot of times in our mind we think, all right, I'm going to ask this question, and if I ask this question at the beginning, I've got to tie it back in.
No.
And you don't. I mean, because it really is just about, getting the mind moving, getting the connection there between the brain and the mouth.
That's correct.
Well, I appreciate that. I like that pre-thought, idea that, hey, if you it's kind of like I hate when people like shut off like fellowship right away, and you're like, all right, It's time to get down to business. And so it's almost like a continuation of that fellowship when you ask that opening question, and then it really sets that mood for that class that this is not like me preaching another sermon here and you have to sit and listen. This is a communal thing. We're going to go through this together. We're going to talk about it. And I expect you to be a part of this class, and I hope that you are, and that your words and your thoughts are important to me growing and to you growing. That's really cool. I think I do some of that sometimes with like that opener question, but I've never really put that into like a thought of, hey, maybe that's why that class went really good and why the class was so talkative and a part of this lesson was because I invited them into the lesson at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. Huh.
Yeah.
Teaching me. I like it.
Hey, man.
That's what I do.
I appreciate it.
It's the trade.
I might go back and watch this podcast and learn even more. That's what's going to happen.
Okay.
No, that's awesome. Aaron, you got a behind the beards moment? I say for Josh, every episode we kind of get to the end of our podcast, and we just kind of look back and say, what is it that we want people to know about, your ministries, your ministers, and your ministry leaders, that as we kind of try to reveal something of the way that we do things. So we have this behind the beards moment where we figuratively shave and say, what do we need you to know about us?
I think something that stood out to me was there's a lot of work that goes into prepping a Bible class and making a Bible class do well. And so I think if you are a Saturday night preparer, which sometimes like life is crazy, right? And sometimes
teachers are volunteers. I'm grateful if Saturday night's the first chance they get. That's okay.
Absolutely. And so that's okay to do that sometimes, but it's also good to one, be in prayer and prayerful for your class, but then also to at least read through it and prep it. I think of a lot of moments where you sit down and have a bowl of cereal and you in the morning or something, you have a couple moments just to read at least a part of your lesson or your curriculum, and taking those moments. And I think if this is a true behind the beards moment, people should understand that ministers put a lot of time into, and hopefully they do put a lot of time into their lessons and their lessons prep and this vision prep. And sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's hard, but there's a lot of work and a lot of method that kind of goes into that. And so buy in and ask for that help. And also I think moments like this where like if you have an opportunity and you're a teacher and you go, hey, I want to be a better teacher, I think you have an open door to be able to go and talk to your minister and say, hey, my life's not in crisis at this moment. This isn't like I need to go have lunch and, help fixing my life. This is a moment where I want to learn from you and how can I improve my teaching ability? I think that would be a new question that somebody would knock on my door and be like, Aaron, I want to teach youth and I want to teach youth better. How can I do that? I'd be like, all right, well, let's kind of go through it and I'll tell you some of the things that I do and what's not successful and what is successful in my eyes.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of care. It's a lot of prayer that goes into it. And I think there is a perception at times, and you see it. I think probably more frequently in youth ministry than you do in others. That we just show up and we just shoot from the hip, whatever goes. That there's not a lot that kind of goes into it.
Such a bad rep we have. Such a bad rep we have.
It is at times, and sometimes we've been guilty of doing that.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes we've been guilty of joking about doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Out of whether it's a desire for humility or whatever. I'll just give people the benefit of the doubt there, but people, I think I want people to know that there's a lot of myself that gets poured into the things that I've given. And even when I give, teachers something that I've prepped to do, because I want people to volunteer to teach in our classes. And if I can make it easier for them, then that's what I love about those resources that Memorial Road and Josh has to offer is I can give someone something where they already have a good, firm, trustworthy base from which to launch. And they can take that and make it their own.
Right.
But there's been a lot that's gone into putting that resource there together for them. It's good stuff. I don't know how this is going to look with three guys on here, but it's not too bad.
Right over
there
Josh's
you go.
face. It'll be good. Josh, I'm glad you're here today. Thanks for coming on the podcast and teaching us and reaching out to our viewers. We want to thank everyone else for being here today. We appreciate you. We love our viewers, and we want to hear from you as well. So email us, text us, whatever it is, and we will try to find the people to help answer those questions and be with you in your spiritual walk and leading your churches as well. But we want to remind you of Galatians 6:9. Don't grow weary in doing good. We say it every week here on the podcast because this world is messy. This life is messy. So allow Christ to use you to do something different, something good in Jesus' name this week. I'm Aaron, and that's Josh, and we will see you next week on Behind the Beards.
Till we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.